Hello, it's Lois here from Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. Welcome back to my studio. I often get asked here on YouTube and in my Patreon community about simple one-point perspective and how to create sort of accurate depth and distance using perspective, which can often be quite confusing for beginners and even for intermediates. And here, hopefully, I'll give you a few quick ideas and tips, ways that you can check the perspective in your reference photographs and make sure that you include simple one-point perspective in your sketching and your painting. The most important thing to do to start with is to establish where the perspective is in your reference photograph. I'll be using this one from Pixabay. So in this photograph, the main point of interest is the shed or barn, and you can see that the long wall is receding into the distance. You can see the slope of the roof as it gets slightly smaller as it goes into the distance, and you can see the slope of the ground. And this is where we can use a ruler to create some imaginary converging lines that follow the lines of perspective in our barn to what we call a vanishing point on the horizon. And in simple one-point perspective, this vanishing point is the point of which we're talking about. So all of our converging lines from the receding parts of our barn will converge at that point. And that's the information that we need to know in order to plot our barn onto the paper with correct one-point perspective. So the vanishing point is the point of one-point perspective. With two-point perspective, you'll have two vanishing points, etc. If you're interested in more advanced perspective, there are lots of wonderful demos on YouTube. But this one is just looking at the basics. Coincidentally, that first post in from the right, at the base of that, or in the middle of that roughly, is our vanishing point, and that's what we'll be using in a little while to plot out and plan out our barn using one-point perspective. But first, I'd love to show you a few pages from my new book, Landscapes in Watercolour, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner. It's published by GMC. Thanks very much to them for commissioning me to write this book. And it's now available from all good online bookstores. I think you can find it. It's available in most parts of the world. So if you take a look at the links below, I'll include some Amazon links, but please do search for your favourite online bookstore, which will probably have a copy. So now let's get back to the demo. First, I'll show you a couple of quick examples to demonstrate the uses, or just the simplest of uses, that you can use one-point perspective for. And I'd recommend that you try some of these experiments out on scrap paper. Just play around with it and see what happens by constructing each of your little sketches with a horizon line, or otherwise known as eye level, because that is where our eye level is. And we're looking into the distance, into the horizon, and that's where we will position our vanishing point. Bearing in mind that we have got flat ground here. It's a different case scenario for hills, either up or down, but of course you can find more information online about these more complex areas. So there's our vanishing point, and so I'll just demonstrate by drawing in some converging lines coming from the vanishing point. It's really important that you make sure that you keep your ruler on that vanishing point. It can sometimes wobble around, so you have to reposition it and keep looking back at the vanishing point. And drawing these lines really faintly. And you can draw these lines wherever you think you need to add any details. Now what I'm going to do is put some telegraph poles or lamp posts, any kind of structure like that between two of these converging lines. And you can see that I'm creating quite a realistic line of poles disappearing into the distance, and that's why we call it a vanishing point, because that's the point at which what we're drawing sort of disappears on the horizon. So let's try another example, this time with a slightly lower horizon line, and we'll put our vanishing point over the other side. And then I'll just add my converging lines radiating out from the vanishing point, making sure that I keep my ruler firmly on that point. Because, as I said before, it's really easy for the ruler to slip from that point, and then you find you'll get an inaccurate converging line. And this exercise is what I highly recommend that you do if you're not familiar with one-point perspective, or if you find it confusing. Just practice it over and over and over on scrap paper, simply drawing in a horizon line into a little box, just plotting in a vanishing point anywhere, drawing the converging lines and seeing what you can fit between those converging lines. And the more you experiment and practice, the easier it will become. In fact, it'll eventually become almost second nature, so you won't actually have to draw in these converging lines when you're constructing your sketch for your painting. You will sort of naturally see them, sort of those imaginary lines, as you plot in the elements in your landscape. So here we've got like a flat wall of a building and a couple of windows. You can see how I'm fitting the windows into the perspective, but I'm keeping my verticals straight or vertical. It's the same for a row of trees. So if you're drawing an avenue of trees, then they will get smaller and closer together as they go off into the distance, eventually sort of vanishing at that vanishing point. I'll now rough out a simplified version of the photograph that we looked at the beginning onto a piece of paper for you using these principles of one-point perspective. It's sped up because this can take a little while, but I'm sure you'll be able to follow this demonstration having seen the information that I've given you at the beginning of the video. And of course, at this stage, you can make any changes that you need to make, add extra doors or windows to your building, simplify even further. This is where you use your artistic license and try out ideas and see what happens. But if you use this simple system for creating one-point perspective, in other words, finding the vanishing point on the horizon, drawing out your converging lines from there, and this is how we add pathways. We can add rows of fences, telegraph poles, lamp posts. We can add figures receding into the distance. And of course, as I've shown you here, we can add simplified versions of buildings into our paintings using our reference photographs. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to include this in our quick tips playlist, and if you're interested in any other quick tips, then please check out that playlist. I think this is quick tip number 11, and we've had some great feedback from people who have been really enjoying our watercolour tips series. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. It's free to do and it really helps with our reach. And don't forget to check out my new book via the links below. And thank you so much to everybody that supports this channel on Patreon. We really do appreciate you. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.